2.5 years ago, I was in the middle of a Twitter storm. I posted something about Black Lives Matter. It just went mental. I lost control of absolutely everything. It was all out of my hands and it changed my life. I believe something similar has happened to you. Could you tell me about that?
Well, Nick, I'd hate to say it was on the same scale because I do a podcast with Toby Young called The Weekly Skeptic, and Toby always mocks me if I talk about being cancelled because he says, no, I was cancelled. I lost 5 official positions, like government positions, whatever it was, public positions. I lost very little. But I said to him, Toby, I had nothing to lose in the first place. So I said to him, what's worse, a king losing his horses and maybe his throne and maybe everything, or a beggar who only had a slice of bread losing his bread? You see, because I had nothing, but I still got cancelled anyway, which was incredible. You actually had quite a lot more to lose. Yours was much worse, let's be clear. I didn't even call mine a cancellation until I was on Trigonometry, and they used the phrase, cancel comedian speaks out, a bit of clickbait. And Leo Kurtz was talking about it, my mate Leo, on his podcast, and he was saying I was being cancelled. I'd call it more of a pile-on, but it's easier to say cancelled, isn't it? So basically, it was very silly, Nick. I got a message from someone saying, I tried to get you on a gig. They were just a fan trying to be nice. They liked my comedy. And this is what the promoter said. This is a bit weird, isn't it? And it was like the promoter had said, we're not really booking straight white men at the moment. We're booking blind. And he said, not that I'm looking for the opposite. Not that we're just booking gay disabled women in wheelchairs, which is a weird phrase he used, not me. But, we're just not really doing straight white men. And I just thought, well, I've had so much of this in the comedy world. It's a bit ridiculous. But I didn't really care that much. I just thought it's kind of mildly amusing. And what I did was I took out all the sensitive information so you couldn't dox the guy. And I just simply tweeted, something like, I dream of a day when I can be judged by the content of my character, or at least the content of my content. And it was just like, I thought this will get about 38 likes, which it did. It was just a little joke about, my struggle is like Martin Luther King. You know what I mean? Just obviously absurd hyperbole, but didn't really think too much about it. But then the Express decided to pick it up somehow. I think Leo retweeted it, and it went to the Express, asked me about it, and I said a couple of things possibly shouldn't have. And then it just all kicked. Actually, that didn't even kick it off. What kicked it off was there's a website called Chortle, a sort of comedy blog that holds this weird power only in the comedy industry. No one in the real world cares about it, but comedians go around going, "Oh, I got 2 stars from Chortle," and it sort of can ruin their life. And this guy Steve Bennett has all this power. Though apparently he actually writes secretly for the Mail on Sunday, I've heard, but he's sort of a big lefty in comedy, and he's a big reviewer, and he can destroy you. So he covered it in Chortle, and that's when I really got attacked, because all the sort of dregs of the comedy world came out to have a pop, and some quite big comedians, and it all kicked off. And then the Telegraph covered it. I was being spoken about on the Jeremy Vine show. Jeff Norcott kindly defended me, and as you know, and then Paul Joseph Watson covered it, and he's got like 1 million followers, and it just kind of, as you know, this thing, it snowballs out of control, and it's a very strange feeling because you're not in control of it. You're having I was having a kind of fight or flight reaction, but there's nothing you can actually do, but your body's sort of experiencing it as a sort of an attack.
Yeah, no, I know exactly what you went through there. So can I just clarify one point?
Yeah.
So when that person told you this agent wasn't going to book you because he's got too many straight white men on his books, that wasn't a surprise to you, was it?
No, that was completely normal in the comedy world. That's been the case for ages.
Yeah, so that was completely normal. That didn't offend you because you knew that was a state of play anyway. And then you just cracked it. So you just cracked a joke about it. That was what started this avalanche.
Exactly. And to be very fair, I probably did then, when asked by the Express, I probably did then give my opinion on how that was. And I said, it's a bit silly. I said, in my world, you'd just be booked. Maybe I'm naive, but you'd just be booked as an individual, because individual comedians are very different. You could have 2 gay comedians. You could have Scott Capurro and Andrew Doyle, and it'd be very, very different. And you wouldn't go, oh, it's too many gay people on the bill. So my vision was always, let's have just the best person, the funniest comedian. They're all individuals. But the thing in the comedy world is, no, we need to have quotas and diversity.
Diversity.
Yeah, and that's, if you believe in that, that's all right. But that's not my belief. I think we should do things by merit. That's what I've always believed, individual merit. That's not very popular these days. So I might have said some things like that. I honestly can't remember exactly what I said now. I've probably blocked it out. But I said a few things along those lines. And like I said, it was ignored until Chortle found it. And then it was sort of straight white rubbish comedian complains he can't get gig. I didn't even want to do the gig. It was like in the Midlands, so I had no particular interest. I was barely doing as many gigs then anyway. I was moving into this other world of whatever I do now, this quasi commentary thing. But I know I've done 11 years of stand-up comedy. I've done thousands. I've done about 2,000 gigs everywhere in the country. I don't need another gig. And but the rhetoric on Twitter was he can't get gigs, even though I've done every club in the country, weekends at the Comedy Store, been on Comedy Central. He's rubbish. He's bleep, many bleep words we won't say, and he's a bigot. And this was all just being thrown at me. And the worst thing was, massive comedians like Jason Manford and fairly big comedians like Richard Herring were all attacking me. And Manford I'd always been nice to and always got on with and been nice about because people have attacked him. The bizarre thing with someone like him, and I didn't used to mention his name, but I think, well, who cares anymore? He was cancelled himself and he lost a BBC One hosting job. He had a scandal. He actually said he was suicidal in a podcast he said he briefly looked at bridges and, a live podcast I went to. So he was incredibly depressed about being cancelled. But then he still piled on me threw me under the bus to nearly 400,000
Was he the comedian? I'm asking the question now, so I don't want to be sued by anybody. Was he the comedian that was pleasuring himself online and video and on a webcam or something?
Something along those lines, yeah.
So yeah, I mean, what those sort of people do, especially the big names, is I've already made it, Jack, and I'm going to do whatever it takes for me to stay on this perch. So you may be a threat, you may be a new guy up and coming, you could be a threat to me in a couple of years' time. Or I need to virtue signal now so nobody comes for me, because I know what happens when a mob comes for you. And I'm quite willing to sacrifice you so I keep my position. And a lot of that is just pure cowardice.
It's those two things, Nick. It's a little bit of the threat thing, maybe, because he made a point. He said, well, this doesn't make any sense what I'm saying, because look at all these people that are still on telly, and he listed people like himself. It's like, yeah, we know you're doing well, Jason. Alan Davis, a load of other people, but they were all white guys that had made it years ago and were still on, which is a thing that happened. I always say it's like Gary Lineker if he was still in the England football team now. What they did in comedy, it's not the biggest complaint in the world, but they kept all the older white guys. Hugh Dennis or whatever is still there, and then they said, right, now it's all diversity. So it was no more. It was very hard as a sort of straight white man to get through. Then some still do. But it was like, right, we're massively reducing those spots. And of course, most people trying to do it in England are probably straight white men just by numbers. And then they said, but we're keeping the older ones. So he was there going, yeah, I'm all right. Look at all these people I've listed, nearly all from the 90s, with the exception of like Rob Beckett. So that's the one thing. And the other thing, like you say, he gets the virtue points. He gets the mild dopamine kick of the likes he got on that tweet, and he did get a lot of likes on it. And but like you say, but at the cost of completely destroying you, which is to me amazing, because that's you at your lowest moment when you or potentially in your lowest moment when you're being attacked like that on Twitter. It's a very nasty experience, especially if you've never been through it before. And people just. It kept escalating. So many people were messaging me, "Are you okay?" Which is quite a weird thing, which is nice, but it's kind of weird. And it was escalating. And it's in another page. People just message you. You're in the Telegraph now, but they don't say if it's good or bad. You're on Jeremy Vine now, and I'm like, oh. And I don't actually it sounds weird. I don't actually want all this attention. I'm not really like that, even despite my job, bizarrely. But I just didn't. It was horrific. The worst one was, I don't know how many said this. I'll give you an exclusive on how bad it was, Nick. I couldn't sleep for like 3 days. I couldn't really eat. And then, and this is even in a mini cancellation, so imagine how it was for you, but I couldn't sleep. And just quickly, I've had comedians I know who have been through way worse on a national scale, but I couldn't really sleep or eat. I was trying to get to sleep, and then I'm half asleep, and I get like a knock on the door. Well, hang on, here's what happened. I was half asleep, and I look at my Instagram, because no one had come to that yet, and someone had come across to my Instagram to attack me as well. So now I drift off to sleep. I hear a knock at the door, and my first thought in my mind was, they've come to my house. Because I'm so half asleep and delirious, and they've been coming at me on Twitter. Now it's Instagram, it's in the papers, and it's so overwhelming. My brain was like, they've come to my house. I'm laughing now, but that's pretty dark.
No, and I understand why you were thinking that, because social media is only 10, 15 years old. And as creatures, we're hundreds of millions of years old, and we've been created and developed over time to have certain sensitivities. And one of those sensitivities is, if many people dislike you, it means you're doing something wrong, and you need to look at yourself, because you cannot survive in a tribe where everyone's against you. So our first reaction is, I have done something. I must have done something if I've upset 8,000 people on Twitter. I must have. So you start looking internally at what you possibly could have done, and you take each criticism as if it was someone you knew telling you that. But it's really a stranger online. It's a bit like walking down the street and having some drunk on the other side of the room scream obscenities at you, and you just walk on by. You don't spend the rest of the day thinking, he said this and he said that, and could that be true? You would treat him for what he was, which was a nutcase. But because on social media, we have much more of a connection, we do mistakenly treat all those people as people who know us. So therefore, we give it far too much value than we really should, and that's what it affects. That's why it affects us internally so much.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. Although the only the only thing I'd slightly change is that they're not all strangers because it was the comedy world, so it was sort of my tribe in a more literal way. But you're right, it's a tribal atavistic reaction. But on top of that, these are my people because I'm a comedian, and the people I know, a lot of them. Now some of them were like open micers I don't know who just want to have a pop. But yeah, they were all saying I'm a terrible comedian and stuff. But yeah, it's pretty horrible. So, and like I say, that was a fraction of. I have a mate who's been, that's happened to him on a national scale with tabloids attacking him. People are following him. You know, he's the public enemy number one. The Guardian said, you know, people should hit him. Basically, it's like it got to. I've seen extreme levels of this, and like I say, Toby Young's was worse. Yours was worse, I'm sure. But yeah, people don't always realize how it affects you. I'm hoping I'd be more armored to it this time. And by the way, I muted it all. Last time I muted it all, but some of it gets through anyway, and people are telling you stuff, and it's almost impossible to completely block out.
I think if it happens again, I think it'd be a lot of it would be water off the duck's back to you now, because you've been through it now. You've spent a long time processing it all. If just like I have, I shouldn't have done this. I shouldn't have done that. I should have done this. One of the lessons I learned is I should have fought back a lot sooner. I went quiet for a week, 8 days, about a fortnight. I went quiet. Well, I went to zero for a fortnight, and my strategy was it'll go away. It'll go away, and it didn't go away. And what I was doing was ruining my own reputation with silence. And then the day I decided I was fighting back, I felt like a different person. I felt like the old Nick. I thought, right, you've destroyed me now. I've been sacked from the charity I founded. My reputation's in tatters. I'm unemployable now. I've got nothing else to lose. I'm going to tip this table upside down now, and let's see where these chips fall. Because I might not win, but I was saying to myself, I might not win, but I'll be a bloody good second, and I'm going to take some of yous down with me. And that was my attitude after 14 days. That's when I started fighting back. So I would do lots of things differently. And I don't think I'd be an emotional wreck like I was for the first 14 days. I think now, and I've had people attempting it since then, because I'm outspoken now. I wasn't 2.5 years ago. I was a mild-mannered, let's have a look at this slightly sensitive topic, and these are my views, being middle of the road, and let's all try to come to an agreement, and that was sort of my philosophy. I'm extremely outspoken now, and when people come for me now, I double down and I laugh at him and I say, come on, come and have a go if you think you're tough enough, because there's nothing you can do to me now, so come on. And they all just walk away because they're all cowards and they're bullies. And that was a big lesson I learned when I started fighting back. And I got an interview with the Mail on Sunday, and that hit the shelves obviously on a Sunday. And from that day onwards, I didn't get one more negative comment on Twitter or social media. Everybody shut up, because all of a sudden there's 10,000 people in the country messaging me on Facebook, all supporting me. And the couple of hundred people who were going for me and creating hell for me all just disappeared, because suddenly they weren't in a big gang anymore now. They were the minority, and 10,000 people were on my side, and it just all changed.
Love that. I love it when you were like, right, I'm fighting back. And I had that feeling myself as well. It took a little bit longer than 14 days for me. But when I got that feeling, one thing that calmed me down, this will sound mental, is I was like, actually, they want to kill me. What I realized was the injustice of it was bothering me a lot. I was like, how can people like Jason Mav and all these people throw me under the bus? It's so cruel. I've been friends with them or whatever, or friendly with them. But once I realized, once I decided at least, they just all they're trying to take me out. Then it became a simple battle. I was like, okay, well, I know what that is. Well, I'm fighting back. You know what I mean? So then it just changed it because the injustice of it and the unfairness was bothering me until I was like, no, they're your enemies. They're trying to take you out. They know you're at a weak point. They're trying to take you down. I was like, okay, now I can fight back because that was something I knew about. But the only problem is, at first fighting back, my friend advised me, who had been through this on a much bigger scale. He said the problem is if you tweet stuff immediately, all of it will just be used and twisted, and anything you say, when it's in that maelstrom, anything you say, because some people are saying, why don't you just say this? It's like, you're not in it, you don't quite get it. Anything you say will become another pile-on, and you're at a weak point then. And the funny thing about it is, Nick, you think you know what it would be like, but actually you don't know what it would be like. No one can actually, even though mine was, at a smaller level, you thought, I probably know what that's like, it's probably pretty bad. It's actually way worse than you think. At least the first time.